The ruins of old Chicago stood as a haunting reminder of humanity's past glory, skyscrapers reduced to crumbling shells beneath the oppressive weight of the Zerth occupation. The sky, once a vibrant blue, was now a dull gray, choked with the remnants of smoke and ash from the relentless bombardments. Within this wasteland, a flicker of defiance ignited among the remnants of humanity. An assembly of exiled warriors gathered in the hushed shadows of a dilapidated amphitheater. Commander Ilara stood at the forefront, her silhouette outlined by the flickering flames of a small campfire. She had once commanded a fleet, leading her troops to victory in a time when hope still flickered in every human heart. Now, the weight of loss hung heavily on her shoulders, a constant reminder of the friends and family who had perished under the Zerth's brutal regime. As she scanned the faces of her comrades, determination mingled with sorrow, each warrior carrying the scars of their past. Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for every soul that has suffered under their tyranny. Ilara began, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. We are the last bastion of humanity, and we will not fade into the shadows. We are the exiled, and we will reclaim our home. The warriors murmured their agreement, their spirits rekindled by her words. Among them was Mara, a lithe and agile scout whose speed and stealth made her invaluable. Relin, the tech savant, had an uncanny ability to manipulate Zerth technology to their advantage. Each member of the Exiled had been cast out for their refusal to submit, their skills now sharpening under Ilara's leadership. As the gathering grew more intense, a flicker of light caught their attention. Orion, the group's enigmatic hacker, emerged from the shadows, his eyes glinting with a mixture of excitement and urgency. He had spent the last few days penetrating the Zerth's encrypted communications, an act of audacity that could easily end in death. "I intercepted something," Orion announced, the weight of his discovery palpable in the air. "There's a weakness, a gap in their defenses. If we act quickly, we can hit a supply outpost that's crucial to their operations." The mention of a weakness sent a ripple of hope through the group. A supply outpost could mean resources, weapons, and most importantly, morale. Ilara felt her heart quicken. The Exiled had been waiting for an opportunity, and this could be their chance to strike a blow against their oppressors. "Where is it?" she demanded, her mind racing with tactical possibilities. "Just outside the city limits," Orion replied, pulling out a crudely drawn map. "It's lightly guarded, but we'll need to move fast. We can't give them a chance to reinforce." Ilara studied the map, tracing the route with her finger. Every moment mattered. The Exiled had spent years preparing for this, and she could feel the surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. They were not just fighting for vengeance, they were fighting for a future. "Prepare yourselves," she commanded, her voice cutting through the noise of anticipation. "Tonight, we take back what is ours." As night fell, cloaked in darkness, the exiled warriors gathered their gear, each movement filled with purpose. The flickering fire illuminated their determined faces, a stark contrast to the despair that had once threatened to consume them. They were no longer exiled, they were a force to be reckoned with, ready to confront their oppressors and reclaim their world. With hearts pounding in unison, they vanished into the shadows, leaving behind the ruins of their past, set on a path toward vengeance and redemption. As the first glimmers of dawn painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, the exiled gathered at the edge of the city, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The supply outpost loomed in the distance, a stark reminder of the Zerth's oppressive presence. Ilara peered through her binoculars, surveying the compound. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their alien features looming over the human workers who scurried about, oblivious to the impending chaos. "Looks like we're right on time," Mara whispered, her eyes narrowing at the sight of a Zerth soldier barking orders. "The shift change is happening now. We can slip in while they're distracted." Ilara nodded, her mind racing with strategy. "Rilin, can you disable their communications?" We need to ensure they can't call for backup once we breach the gates." "Already on it," Rylan replied, his fingers flying over a small handheld device. "I've tapped into their network. Just need a few more seconds, and done." He grinned as the outpost communication systems flickered and went dark. With the Zerth temporarily cut off from reinforcements, Alara felt a surge of confidence. "All right, everyone knows their roles. Stay sharp and move fast. We hit hard, grab supplies, and get out before they even know what hit them." With a collective breath, the Exiled slipped into the shadows, their movements fluid and silent. The thrill of the hunt coursed through their veins, banishing the remnants of fear. As they approached the outpost, they could hear the distant sounds of machinery and the chatter of Zerth guards. Mara led the way, her footsteps barely making a sound. She halted at the perimeter fence, nodding to Ilara. With a quick motion, Rylan produced a small explosive device. They had repurposed scraps of Zerth tech into powerful tools, and he set it against the fence. The blast was muffled, just enough to create a gap for them to slip through. Once inside, chaos erupted. Ilara signaled the team to spread out. They moved quickly, targeting supply crates and weapons caches. The first wave of their assault went smoothly, the element of surprise working in their favor. They seized weapons and ammunition, their spirits rising with every crate they liberated. But as the Exiled gathered supplies, an alarm blared, shattering the brief moment of triumph. Zerth soldiers swarmed in from all directions, their reptilian forms glistening under the harsh lights. The air thickened with tension, and Alara felt her heart race. "Rylan, cover our retreat," she shouted, instinctively positioning herself between her comrades and the encroaching Zerth. Rylan's fingers danced over his device again, launching a series of automated drones that buzzed into the fray. They whirred past Alara, distracting the Zerth as they unleashed a barrage of electrical shocks. The aliens staggered, momentarily disoriented. "Go, go, go," Alara urged, her voice cutting through the chaos. She and Mara led the charge, grabbing as many supplies as they could carry. Just as they reached the perimeter, a Zerth soldier lunged, his clawed hand grasping for Alara. With a quick sidestep, she dodged and countered, delivering a swift kick to his midsection. The alien crumpled, but she knew they couldn't linger. "Mara, flank left," Alara yelled as they sprinted toward the escape route. Mara nodded, darting to the side, drawing fire away from Alara and Rylan. The compound erupted into a battleground, but the Exiled pressed on, determination fueling their every move. As they neared the fence, the sounds of combat filled the air, a cacophony of chaos and defiance. "Almost there," Rylan shouted, his face a mask of concentration as he hacked into the fence's security system again. The gate buzzed, unlocking just as the Zerth regained their footing. With one final push, Alara and her warriors barreled through the opening, the sounds of Zerth shouts and gunfire echoing behind them. They ran into the safety of the surrounding woods, hearts racing with adrenaline. "We did it," Mara exclaimed, breathless and exhilarated. Alara allowed herself a small smile. They had struck a blow against their oppressors, proving that humanity would not be easily extinguished. But as they caught their breath, she knew this was just the beginning. The real fight lay ahead, and the Zerth would not take their loss lightly. As the Exiled regrouped in their hidden base, the atmosphere buzzed with exhilaration and urgency. They had secured weapons and supplies, a significant victory that bolstered their morale. Yet, Alara knew this triumph was merely the first step in a much larger battle. Rylan set up a makeshift command center in the dimly lit space, connecting scavenged screens and tech to analyze the data they had captured from the Zerth supply outpost. "Look at this," Rylan said, his voice tinged with excitement and urgency. "The Zerth have been developing a bioweapon, a way to exterminate any remaining human populations in one fell swoop. If we don't stop it, they'll wipe us out entirely." Ilara's heart sank. The implications were grave, and the sense of urgency intensified. Where is it being developed? She pressed, her mind racing. Here, Rylan replied, pulling up a detailed holographic map of the area. A location flashed red, Zerth Central Command, a heavily fortified facility deep within the occupied zone. This is where they're assembling the bioweapon. We need to get in and gather intel to either sabotage it or destroy it altogether. Mara stepped forward, her expression fierce. The defenses will be tougher than before. If we want to breach Central Command, we'll need a solid plan. Ilara nodded, her mind shifting into overdrive. We'll need to gather more intel on their security systems. Rylan, can you hack into their network again? See if you can find out their shift rotations and guard details. Already on it, Rylan said, figures flying across the keyboard. I'll need a distraction on the outside while I work my way in. Leave that to me, Mara replied, her eyes glinting with determination. I can create a diversion that will draw their attention away from the entrance. Just give me a time frame. As the plan took shape, the tension in the room transformed into a focused energy. Each warrior prepared for the mission ahead, sharpening their weapons and checking their gear. Ilara felt the weight of leadership settle upon her shoulders, the lives of her comrades resting in her hands. Hours later, under the cover of darkness, the Exiled set out toward Zerth Central Command. As they navigated through the ruins of a once bustling city, shadows danced across the ground, and the only sounds were the whispers of the wind and their own quiet breaths. Ilara led the way, her senses heightened, keenly aware of the danger that loomed ahead. Upon reaching the outskirts of the command facility, Mara stealthily slipped away to execute her part of the plan. Ilara watched her disappear into the night, a silent prayer on her lips for her safety. Moments later, the unmistakable sound of explosions echoed through the air, the night sky illuminated by bursts of orange and red. Go, now! Ilara shouted, leading the charge toward the facility's entrance while the Zerth guards rushed to respond to the distraction. Rylan was already busy hacking into the outer security systems, bypassing locks and alarms with deft precision. The gates opened with a hiss, and the Exiled surged forward. Ilara's heart raced as they entered the facility, but the exhilaration was short-lived. Alarms blared, red lights flashing ominously overhead, and they could hear the unmistakable sounds of Zerth soldiers mobilizing. Keep moving, Ilara ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. They raced through narrow hallways, the scent of metal and smoke filling the air as they navigated through a maze of corridors. Finally, they reached a control room filled with advanced screens displaying real-time data. Rylan quickly set to work, pulling up information about the bioweapon's development while Ilara and the others stood guard, weapons drawn and nerves on edge. Here it is, Rylan exclaimed, a map of the bioweapon's assembly line flashing before them. We need to sabotage it now, or we'll be too late. Before they could react, the door slammed open, and a squad of Zerth soldiers stormed in, their alien faces twisted in rage. The Exiled barely had time to react as gunfire erupted, the room filled with chaos. Hold the line, Ilara shouted, her heart racing as she returned fire. The battle was intense, but the Exiled fought with the determination of warriors who had nothing left to lose. They would not be defeated, not now, not ever. As Rylan worked frantically to download critical information, Ilara and her team engaged in a fierce firefight. Each pulse of energy felt like a reminder of their stakes, freedom or annihilation. The tide of battle surged and flowed, but Ilara knew they could not afford to fail. The fate of humanity hung in the balance. The control room erupted into chaos, blaring alarms drowning out the clamor of battle. Ilara's heart raced as she ducked behind a console, returning fire while glancing at Rylan, who was still hunched over the terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard. Rylan, how long until you finish downloading that intel? She shouted, adrenaline surging through her veins. "Just a few more seconds," he replied, glancing over his shoulder at the oncoming Zerth soldiers. "But we need to hold them off." Mara, stationed by the doorway, picked off one soldier after another with precision shots from her energy rifle. Her movements were fluid, a dance of death that showcased her agility and training. The others took cover behind whatever they could find, exchanging fire and strategizing their next move. "Get ready to fall back." Alara barked as another wave of Zerth soldiers poured into the room. The Exiled were outnumbered, but they fought like lions, fueled by the knowledge that their lives and the future of humanity depended on their success. Just then, Ryland's voice cut through the chaos. "I've got it. The bioweapon is located in the lower levels, but we need to disable the main power grid first to access it. If we don't, the Zerth will activate it in minutes." Ilara's mind raced. "We split up. Rylan and I will go for the power grid. Mara, you hold the line here. When we're in position, we'll signal you." "Be careful," Mara called out, her eyes fierce as she continued to fire at the incoming Zerth. "Stay sharp," Ilara responded, determination coursing through her as she and Rylan dashed out of the control room, weaving through the chaos. They navigated the twisting corridors, hearing the shouts and orders of Zerth soldiers echoing behind them. "Left," Rylan shouted, pulling Ilara into a side hallway that led toward the maintenance area. The air was thick with tension as they advanced, the sounds of combat growing distant, yet their nerves remained on edge. As they reached the main power room, Ilara scanned the area. "Looks clear for now. Rylan, set up the terminal. I'll cover you." Rylan nodded, quickly getting to work while Ilara stood guard. She knew time was of the essence. Every moment spent here could spell doom for Mara and the rest of the Exiled. Suddenly, the heavy metallic door creaked open, and a squad of Zerth soldiers stormed in, weapons raised. "Now, Rylan," Ilara shouted, her pulse quickening. With an urgent flick of his fingers, Rylan initiated a shutdown sequence. "Cover me," he yelled, sweat beading on his forehead. Ilara unleashed a volley of shots, taking down 2 soldiers before ducking behind a pillar as the rest returned fire. The air crackled with energy as blasts ricocheted around them. Come on," she urged, her heart racing. Finally, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Rylan glanced back, relief washing over his face. "It's done. The power's out. Now we can access the bioweapon." "Let's move," Ilara said, grabbing Rylan's arm and pulling him toward the access panel that led to the lower levels. They sprinted down a dimly lit corridor, adrenaline propelling them forward. As they descended deeper into the facility, they could feel the weight of the Zerth's plans bearing down on them. The bioweapon was close, and they needed to act quickly. At the end of the corridor, they reached a massive door marked with glowing Zerth symbols. Rylan worked furiously at the panel, trying to hack the lock while Ilara stood guard. Just as the door hissed open, a wave of Zerth soldiers descended upon them from the shadows, weapons ready. Ilara and Rylan exchanged glances, knowing they were outnumbered. "Go, get inside," Ilara shouted, pushing Rylan forward as she faced the oncoming horde. She fired round after round, buying him precious seconds as he dove into the room. The deafening roar of the explosions echoed through the Zerth Central Command, shaking the very foundations of the facility as Ilara and Rylan sprinted down the dimly lit corridor. The lights flickered ominously above them, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. Each blast behind them was a reminder of the urgency of their escape and the power of their mission. "We need to reach the surface," Ilara shouted, pushing herself to run faster despite the fatigue that threatened to overwhelm her. "Mara is counting on us." "Right behind you," Rylan replied, glancing back at the chaos unfolding behind them. The explosions had set off a chain reaction, and Zerth soldiers scrambled to respond, their shouts echoing like a distant storm. They reached the exit, a massive door leading to the outside world. As Ilara forced it open, she could feel the heat radiating from the detonations behind them. The light of dawn was breaking through the cracks, illuminating the destruction left in their wake. They had to move fast. Just as they stepped outside, they were met with a scene of pandemonium. The once stalwart Zerth forces were now in disarray, disoriented by the blasts and the chaos within their own ranks. Mara, with her unparalleled agility, darted between Zerth soldiers, taking them down with deadly efficiency. "Ilara, Rylan, over here," she called, waving them toward a makeshift rally point behind a pile of debris. They rushed over, panting heavily but filled with renewed determination. "Did you hold the line?" Rylan asked, scanning the perimeter for threats. "Just barely," Mara replied, a fierce smile on her lips. "But we need to regroup and get out of here before they can mount a counterattack. You guys got the intel." Ilara nodded, adrenaline pumping through her. Rylan downloaded the schematics of the bioweapon. "We can use it to launch a full-scale attack on their remaining facilities." "Perfect," Mara said, her eyes shining with resolve. "But first, we need to get back to our safe house and regroup. We can't let their reinforcements reach us." The Exiled moved quickly, navigating the ruins of the city as they made their way back. The sky above was a tapestry of colors, hinting at a new dawn, yet the weight of their mission pressed heavily upon them. Once they arrived at their hideout, Rylan immediately set to work analyzing the data they had secured. The room buzzed with a mixture of tension and anticipation. The trio had been fighting for survival, but now they had the chance to turn the tide against the Zerth once and for all. "We have to hit them hard," Ilara stated, her voice steady. "They'll be vulnerable while they're trying to regroup. If we can strike their command centers, we can cripple their operations." Mara leaned over Rylan's shoulder, examining the schematics. "This layout shows several key facilities within striking distance. If we coordinate our efforts, we can create a ripple effect that takes out their command structure." Ilara felt a surge of hope. "We can't waste any time. Gather the others. We need to rally everyone for a final strike. This is our chance to reclaim our world." As the warriors gathered, Ilara felt the energy in the room shift. They were no longer a band of exiled fighters. They were a united front, a coalition of humanity ready to fight back. Each warrior carried the weight of their losses, their pain fueling the fire of vengeance that burned within them. Under Ilara's command, they crafted their plan, outlining each move with precision. They would attack in waves, utilizing Mara's agility to distract the Zerth, Rylan's tech skills to disable their defenses, and Ilara's leadership to coordinate the assault. As night fell, they set out, hearts pounding with anticipation. The Zerth compound was eerily quiet, the shadows dancing ominously against the backdrop of the rising moon. "Remember, we fight for our home, for every soul lost," Ilara reminded her team, her voice unwavering. "This is our moment. We will reclaim Earth, and we will ensure that the dawn of vengeance is upon us." With a collective roar of determination, they charged into the darkness, ready to confront their oppressors. The time had come to unleash their fury, and as they advanced, the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, illuminating the battlefield. The exiled warriors were no longer just fighting for survival, they were fighting for a future, and they would not be denied. The dawn of vengeance had arrived, and the reckoning of the Zerth had begun.